games and violence. I'll give you guys a stat. 97% of 12 to 17-year-olds in the U.S. played video games in 2008, thus fueling an $11.7 billion domestic video game industry. In 2008, 10 of the top 20 best-selling video games in the U.S. contain violence. And this, I got this from Entertainment Software Association website. The popularity of video games and its related media are far-reaching. The growth of video games popularity is growing exponentially as technologies advance and more resources are being used to make these games. I've logged quite a few hours on my PS3 with most of them being violent video games. And they've recently come under fire for violent acts that's being committed by people, and they're being blamed for these violent acts. The games with ratings that are mature because they have violent or sexually explicit images or themes. There's two camps. One camp believes that violent video games show no concrete evidence as to the link between violence and violent video games. The other camp believes that these video games desensitize people through their constant exposure to violent images and acts that they take part in. And after we discuss both these points, we're going to engage in a discussion and find out what everyone thinks. So, we get a little bit of the history. Death Race, an article titled "Do Video Games Kill?" by Karen Sternheimer, talked about a game in the 70s called Death Race. This game required a person and vehicle to hit pedestrians in the road in order to get points. And the outrage that followed led to parents storming into video game arcades and actually dragging the game out and burning it in the streets. A book titled "Violent Video Games and Aggression" explored the Columbine shootings that happened in the late 90s, which prompted another allegation of violent video games being the culprit. The shooters were known to play games such as Doom and Wolfenstein 3D. Okay, so let's go on to the pro side. Or here's some examples of some violent video games. We've got Max Payne and Grand Theft Auto, Dead Space, he's getting this eye gouged down, and then God of War 3 is taking his head off with Mortal Kombat. Okay, the pro side. A recent report done by Lawrence Kuttner and Cheryl K. Olson reported that 60% of adolescents that had played a mature rated video game committed an act of violence, where those that did not play these games were only 39%. So this shows that there's some kind of correlation between violence and violent video games. A study by Tracy L. Deese from University of Florida shows that the reward and penalty system in video games has a marked effect on those playing. Those that were playing the video game with the reward system displayed more aggressive behavior. The book "Stop Teaching Our Kids to Kill: A Call to Action Against TV, Movie, and Video Game Violence" by Dave Grossman and Gloria DiPintano. They've got an interesting take. They talk about the positive responses that players get when playing video games, and that could relate into the real world, that could carry over. And then also the FBI added video game playing to their school shooter profiles. Then moving on to the con. Two collaborative stats by Entertainment Software Association FBI website shows the arrest rate for juvenile murders has fallen 71.9% between 1995 and 2008, and the arrest rate for all juvenile crimes had declined 49.3% in the same period. Video game sales have more than quadrupled, so that kind of shows an opposite correlation. So even when video games were their most popular, crime was actually going down. There's also, I got this from procon.org, there's a simple misinterpretation of the cause and effect. So I'm not saying that violent video games cause people to become violent, more that violent people are attracted to that kind of medium. Also, you know, we've been exposed to different kinds of media, movies, books that have violent images, you know, throughout history. Stephen Malley, in his book Exploration of Adolescent Perceptions of Video Game Realism, introduces the fact that the majority of well-adjusted gamers can distinguish between what's real and what's fantasy. And one last point, violence existed before video games had even been around. Okay. All all right, I've gone over the pros and cons, and I'd like to engage in a discussion with you guys, find out what you guys think about the subject, and just get to the bottom of the issue. First, a couple of polling questions. What are some of your favorite video games you guys play? Yeah.
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty, that's pretty violent. Mortal Kombat, that's a brutal game. Anybody?
Mario Kart.
Mario Kart, that can. So a couple of brutal games. Who believes that these games, if you play these games, that they stir any kind of emotions in yourself, any kind of violent emotions? They do.
Yeah, they definitely can. I mean, not necessarily just from like shooting at people and stuff, and just being like trying to emulate that, but more of the frustration of just playing the game itself that you can experience with other things in life as well.
Yeah. Have you guys acted on any of these feelings?
Not more than like broken controllers.
Yeah, broken
so,
controller, like.
so maybe some, yeah, so maybe some form of aggression or something. Can you, but you can, for the most part, you can distinguish between reality and fantasy, would you say so?
That's right.
Does the reward system sometimes present in video games confuse you?
Not really. I mean,
Not really.
no.
Anyone disallow any family to play these games or anything, or have kids?
I don't let my nephews.
You don't let your nephews
No.
play?
Their dad lets them play, my brother lets them play like Call of Duty, but when I watch them and stuff, I don't
You don't
let them play with them.
And then you
We're a Wii family.
Oh, okay, so
Playing
that's
games, a lot of Mario Karts and stuff.
that's pretty good.
Do you know like what the rating specifically is for
Yeah,
certain age
it
groups?
goes like children, everyone, and then everyone 10 and older, and then teen, I believe. Teen is 13 and older, and then mature is 17, and then adult is 18 and older. So, and then there's different variations of those, but those are, basically you can buy them in the store unless you're of that age. Do you guys believe that these rating restrictions are adequate in, kind of shielding the adolescents from playing?
I'd say no, because I was playing Resident Evil when I was 9 years old.
Yeah.
My dad went out and got it for me, so
Yeah.
I mean, it's all. I think there's a lot of factors that people don't really take into account. That they think because you play a rated M game when you're younger, that means you're going to be predispositioned to go out and commit a heinous act of violence.
Do you think there should be any stricter legislation put on video games?
I think that it would kind of be nice, because I know that like mentally stable individuals would play that game and then be fine and they could walk away, but there are some people who would play that when they're younger and get bad impressions, and then that would influence them.
Right.
Because like, there's a lot of people who would play that game and then be negatively influenced and start to.
What about any other types of violent media? Should that come under fire as much as video games have?
Yeah, I think that it's just kind of in general.
Okay. Anything that I haven't covered regarding this issue that anybody would like to discuss?
What video games have you played?
Oh, I played all the ones that I showed as examples. I played Call of Duty, Mortal Kombat, and yeah, like you said, like when I was a kid, my dad would just buy me games. So I've played really brutal games before. So.
Did you ever act out in violence?
No, I've thrown my controller in frustration.
Never said.
Never emulated anything. But
I think a lot of times too, when they do have like the overage or like the over 17 games, a lot of places don't card these kids. Like if you go to Walmart and you have somebody that looks 15 but they're really 13, they'll just give them the game. Like
Right.
a lot of places don't necessarily take that rating into effect. They're just like, oh, okay, well you have the money, that's all that matters.
right.
And necessarily if they started carding these kids, maybe then they would, well, video game sales would drop, but then they would have a better, stance on how the violence affects kids.
Okay. All right, that's a good point. I'm gonna move on to my conclusion. This is an issue that will only become more heated as realism in video games is enhanced and gamer interaction evolves. Being an avid video gamer myself, I understand the reason that people are outraged in the level of violence portrayed in these games and the need to protect young people from being exposed. But I understand that video games, like other type of media, are meant to be play with a dissociative attitude, and, you know, they understand that there's a clear line between fantasy and reality. This is a very important issue that I'm pleased I was able to discuss with you. We had some good points, from both sides. We got to see what video games people played and your guys' ideas about the rating system and what should, so